Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome to Colleague 7 Sprint Review for 18.12.02. This will cover a slightly longer sprint due to the Christmas period, so this is for the work undertaken between the 11th of December to the 7th of January. Starting with the sprint goal, and for this sprint our aim has been to enhance and refine the offer and placement entity workflows in preparation for the back office project. Looking at the high-level items and to explain further, in this sprint we've been able to update the offer record so that it contains the back office tab based on a user privilege, of course, and as part of this work we've also included some bug fixes in relation to the placement workflow, which I'll go through shortly. We've updated the offer and placement selection screens to include date range searching across the start date, end date, create date and working dates for current placements only. Based on a client request, we've added Century Gothic to the text editor. We've looked at the options that are given when generating an email from an offer or placement, and we've added an other option to accommodate alternative recipients to these emails, also a both option for sending the email to both the candidate and the contact. We've added a global setting for the default owner of a requirement on creation. This works the same as it does on the candidate, company and contact record. We've made skill grading a lookup so that this can be tailored to suit your own grading terminology for skills. We've applied multiple fixes to the undo placement feature, so this feature now works as expected. Our API has been updated so that it's now a control for retrieving existing details from an existing candidate record. We've updated the link to requirement workflow against the candidate record so that this uses a partial view. This will include the ability to define whether you wish the candidate to be longlisted or shortlisted against the requirement. And we've started work on an adverts tab to the requirement record. This is based on a user privilege and will give an overview of the status of applications from a Broadbean post that you sent from the requirement. It will also include links to view the applicants. This work is still in progress, so it won't be part of the upgrade or something I can demo today, but it has come a long way and will be part of the next sprint for that review. We'll now go through a brief demonstration on the key features from this sprint. Okay, so the first point to cover on, and it's really a wider topic, but it's essentially everything relating to the placement area. As part of the sprint, we had an initial PBI relating to ensuring that the back office tab was added to the offer record, which has now been added. And that's obviously on the basis that you have access to the back office tab through a user permission. But that work was done to accommodate the back office tab being part of the offer record, but also in turn all of those associated merge fields being then made available to documents or emails that you might want to send from the offer record. So you have that as an overview. But then from that brought about several different reviews and changes that we also needed to make in the placement area to ensure that rates were copying over as they needed to, that checklist items were copying over from placements into extensions and amendments, and essentially that the history area was getting updated as it needed to. There were several knock-on bug fixes and changes that needed to be made just as part of an overall assessment in this area, just so that we tied down some things that were occurring when you were using the system, mainly around the creation of a placement, the creation of extensions, the creation of amendments, and ensuring that essentially all data in relation to the original placement travels fluidly through those different extension types. So that was the placement area in terms of the key updates that were made there. On the placement selection screen, also a date option has now been added in here as well. So you have the option off the placement selection screen now of selecting whether or not you want to search by start date, end date, created date, and working, which is to say that it will search for any active placements that are between their start date and end date, or if they have a start date and no end date, it will take those into account as well. But that gives you the means to be able to do obviously date range searching from placements and find placements that are obviously within a specific date range relevant to yourself. So those are some key updates that were made. Also, just to mention that the undo placement was also worked on as well in terms of bug fixing and just making sure that functionality works as expected also. So all round placement got a lot of work over the Christmas period just to ensure that it was completely meeting standard. That's the main update there. The next point to cover relates to the skills area. So not just against candidate skills, but any skill. It's possible to assign skill grading, and that has been the case for a while. But what we've done is we've updated the skill grading to be a lookup. So when you're on the skills tab, looking at skills that have been assigned over to an entity, on selection of the skill, you're shown the grade option, and you have the option there to assign a grade. Now, and previously what the grade was is basically a numerical list, and you could decide how long you wanted this list to be in terms of the number of numbers for use of grading. But what we've done now is change it so that the skill grade is a lookup. So within the admin area, under lookups, you will find an option now called skill grades in here, and that will contain essentially your skill grade lookup list, which will dictate the option that you have here. So if you have a different type of grading that you want to deploy, gold, silver, bronze, or first, second, third, that kind of thing, rather than a numerical system for grading, then now you have the ability to do that. And obviously ungraded is the one at the top there that essentially takes the grading away from the skill. But that's the main update that's been made there. The last point to cover relates to the link to requirement feature on the candidate record. So within the candidate record of the submit option, you've had this option here to link to requirements. But the format in which you went about when you were linking to requirement, it would take you off to the requirement selection screen, and as a user flow that wasn't particularly consistent with the way that we've set up the rest of the system. So what we wanted to do was update that so it involved or utilized a partial view. So when I say that, what I mean is from the submit option off link to requirement, when you click that now, it will bring through a requirement lookup view. And then from here, you can enter in, essentially a requirement that you know to be live or that you want to associate this candidate to. Select the requirement, and then on hitting select, it will then ask you whether or not you want to longlist this candidate or shortlist. We'll say that we want to shortlist this candidate, and then you can enter some notes. And well, I'll just put some test notes here. On selecting OK, you'll then the candidate will then be added to the requirement, and you'll be given a confirmation message of basically advising that the candidate has been shortlisted. But you also have a link here as well if you want to open the candidate record and go to the candidate record. So if we click on that now, what we'll see going into the requirement record is the candidate has been linked to the requirement record, and obviously it's been shortlisted there. And also if we select on that and show the candidate details, you'll see the notes that were entered came through into that area. That will also affect on the history as well. When the candidate was shortlisted, the notes will come through into the history record as well. So that's the update that's been made there. It just means that the user flow from a candidate record into requirement when you're linking a candidate is just far more fluid, and it is just more consistent with how we've set up the system. But that's the main update there. As always, if you have any queries or feedback, please get in touch. I'll be keen to hear from you. Also, for those using Colleague 7, feel free to submit your enhancement requests via the support team or directly to me using the above email address. The next video will be the sprint plan for 19.01.01, and as always, that will contain a high-level overview on the items we intend to work on during that sprint. Thanks for watching.